They're going around and around and around. They're asking, what is it that you would do? And they finally get to Sartre, and Sartre is looking at the chessboard, and he said, I'd finish this game. I'd finish this game. And why? Because the only thing that's real in your life is what it is that you're doing right now, which, for better or worse, means that whatever you're doing right now is the most important thing in your life. You're not doing it because it's the most important thing in your life. It's the most important thing in your life because you're doing it right now. So the question at any given moment is, what are you choosing to do right now? Whatever it is that you're doing at this moment is the most important thing. So maybe at the very least, maybe like make sure that whatever you're doing right now is worthy of you. So the future is just a hope, the past is just a memory, so the only thing that's real is the moment right now. What is it that's going to make you happy? I guess the better question is, what is it right now that could be making you happy? Not like if I were someplace else, but where you're sitting right now, what you're doing right now, are you able to focus on this game and to finish this game? What can you make out of this moment right now that will somehow contribute not just to a happy life, because perhaps the purpose of life is not to be happy. Perhaps the purpose of life is to be good, to be virtuous, to do the right thing independent of your circumstances. And maybe by doing that, you can find happiness and joy in those moments. And what is life except what's life except for a collection of moments? And what's a happy life except for a collection of happy and joyous moments put together that at the end you can look back and say, yeah, it was happy. Because so many days you could say, at this moment I'm happy, because you find a way to find happiness in it. How do you? And so what are we hoping to overcome with wealth? Like if we were younger and we were barely making it through. And of course we know that that's the case because we hear our parents talking. Like when you guys come in here and you ask me how am I doing, what do I oftentimes say? Every day's Christmas. And it sounds wonderful. I told you guys where that comes from, yeah? Yeah. It comes from Andy Sanchez. He used to run the Learning Center here. And you come into him, how's it going, Andy? Oh, every day's Christmas. Every day's Christmas. And what's funny is I said that to somebody a few weeks ago. Where was I? I was someplace, not here, of course, but I was elsewhere, somewhere here in National City, and what the heck was I? Oh, Smart and Final. And the cashier asked me, how are you doing tonight? I said, oh, every day's Christmas. And he smiles and he goes, I used to know someone who used to say that. Well, who? And he said, oh, it was a long time ago. I played baseball at Sweetwater High School, and my coach used to say that. That's where it comes from. It was him. I was like, oh, Andy. He's like, oh, you know Andy. Yeah, I knew Andy. And I told you that I was growing up, I hate Christmas. It's my least favorite day of the year. I absolutely hate Christmas. And because I remember one time staying up later than I should have and listening to my parents discuss whether we were going to keep the electricity or the gas on for Christmas. Were we going to have heat or lights on a tree? Because you couldn't afford both. And so as you get older, you start to make up for some of those things that you feel like maybe you were missing when you were a kid. And if God willing, you decide to have kids, then you want to make up for those things, like you want to maybe kind of raise kids with the lack of anxiety that you had maybe as you were growing up. And so you start to realize that there's something that's more important than like our goals are just like focused on us. I want wealth for me. I want to achieve these goals for me. But maybe as we get older, we start to realize that there's something else to live for, which is others. And so there's something to be said there about how maybe it broadens our perspective on life by living for more than just ourselves, perhaps. Okay. Others. So what are some of those things I'm thinking about what that make us unhappy, that it guarantees that we're going to live in such a way that we're going to be unhappy? He says it's a paradox. What are the things that make us happy? I don't know, yeah. Now, do we go into business? Do you think a person goes into business saying, this is going to be a living hell? This is going to make me unhappy. No, what do we focus on instead? Money, profit. And if we're doing that, we're probably making a mistake. Because when you think about why a person would go into business, there is that motive, the profit motive. But if you go into business for the profit motive, what happens when your profits start to dip? Well, you might start to sacrifice your product. Instead, let's say you go into business because you really love something. Like you just love dance, and so we figure, what else should I do? Should I go work as an accountant or in marketing, or should I open up a dance studio? Well, are you make a bunch of money at a dance studio? I don't know, and that's the truth. I just don't know. But will it make you happy? I don't know either. Because it's one thing to love to dance. It's another thing to run a business around it, though. Because once you run a business around it, it's no longer just for the passion itself. It's now a business, and that means that your emotions for dance are going to be tied up in how many people are coming, and are you making rent, and are you making a profit? And if you lose everything and you go bankrupt because of it, it can leave a sour taste in your mouth for dance. And that might be something that we don't think about before we go into it. But it's tough to count all the costs, because what is it in life that's going to make you happy? I don't know. You don't, and by the way, you probably don't know either. Because if we're saying it's about money, how many of us in here are rich? Okay, so what we're actually thinking is that there's something that I imagine might make me happy. Because if only I had, if I had money to go on vacations, where does vacation take you? Somewhere other, was that? Away. Somewhere other than where you presently are. So I guess the good question to ask is, what do I not like about where I presently am such that I want to get away from it? And there are good reasons to go on vacation, like you want to visit places and enjoy things. But it's another thing if you want to buy really expensive cars so they can drive you away from where you presently are. Or go on vacation so you can go away from where you presently are. And it's interesting that when, as Ant's pointing out, that people who have children start to focus on where they are, not where they would rather be. So maybe the thing that they're seeking is now at home. Back to you, and then back to Danny. Yeah. How do you know it's going to make you happy? Right? Are you happy right now? I mean, just mean you, but as just generally. If we're happy right now, then we know what makes us happy. But if we're not happy right now, but we're imagining what might make us happy, then happiness is kind of like a hope more than it is an actual thing that we feel. Yeah. So do you think that happiness, therefore, is a decision?
Yeah.
How do you decide that? So happiness has to ensue, can't be pursued. Yeah, that sounds familiar. Yeah, happiness has to come from what you're doing. It's difficult to find what's going to make you happy. We can imagine what might make us happy, but actually, that thing actually making us happy might be very difficult. Yeah, Danny. It's that I don't know that's probably really truthful in there, because you don't know. Like, imagine if, you hadn't gone to that, but instead you've been taken to, I don't know, some robotics thing, and you're just like, robotics, that's my passion. And right now even as a senior now, you'd be working on I don't know, forget the Mars rover. You're looking at a Pluto rover, because you're so good at robotics and you fell so in love with it that you commit all of yourself to it. But you'd never know because that's not what happened. Yeah.
What do you think it would happen? I could have fallen in love with something else.
So it almost doesn't matter what you fall in love with. What, Louise? If you have to hold your mouth, it's bad. What is it? Yeah, because it's that I don't know that's important, because it almost doesn't really matter then what it is that you fall in love with. It's like when you're asking that question about what you should go to school for. If you want to go to college, again, college isn't for everybody, man. It's like coffee; it's not for everybody. But if you're going to put all that time and effort into it, it's almost like this really cruel trick that when you're 18, 19, 20, we don't really know what the heck we want. We don't even know what would make us happy, of course. And yet we're being asked to go and put a whole bunch of money into studying something that is supposed to, almost determine the whole trajectory of our lives. And yet, what do we know about where we're going to be when we're 25, 35, 45, 55, 65? You're going to change so much, and yet, so how do you decide what it is that you're going to go to school for? I don't know. Now imagine if you put a whole bunch of, what is that? The number, I can't remember what the number is. Ms. Gutierrez, you probably know the number of this. Number of people who drop out of teaching in the first 5 years.
Oh, a lot.
Yeah, it's a really high number. And if you think about it, you go get your bachelor's degree, you take the test, you go through a credential program, all that is very expensive. And my old master teacher, Mrs. Hall, she was in this, I was a student teacher in this room, and I remember she was telling me about a past student teacher she had, that one of them got all the way to the end of his student teaching. It was not to the end, but about 3/4 of the way through, and he just told her, this isn't what I wanted to do. So she's like, well, what did you want to do? He said it was either between this and driving trucks. Trailer truck, long haul trucks. That's a pretty big chasm between those two things. So she told him, I think you should probably go drive trucks. So he said, okay, I'm going to do that. And that was it. He left the program, paid a whole bunch of money. I guess it's better to find out there than to get 10, 15, 20, 30 years into it and realize that you hate it. Or get 10, 15, 20, 30 years into it and start to hate it. We all know people. We all have had teachers like that before. And so how is it that you can possibly know what's going to make you happy? Especially when think about the things that make you happy, don't they change a lot? For example, today, if I were to ask you, what's your favorite song? And you tell me what your favorite song is on February 8th of 2024. But you don't know what your favorite song is going to be 2 days from now. How often does your favorite song change? How can we possibly ever know what's going to make us happy? So the point is that if we're pursuing happiness, then there's a really good chance it's going to constantly be moving around on us. But if you can take with you some kind of a characteristic that allows you to find happiness in things. If you think about the kinds of things that we say would make me happy, vacations, cars, skydiving, we tend to think of really big things. But have you ever found happiness just someplace you would never expect it to be? I've talked about Mike Tyson before. Mike Tyson's a guy who unifies all the heavyweight titles by the time he's 20 years old. And this guy goes around there and he's talking about how he's going to eat his opponent's children and stuff like that. Literally, he's like, I'm going to eat his children. Now, if you go to 20-year-old Mike Tyson and you tell him, hey man, would you rather earn all of these hundreds of millions of dollars, which he earned, or would you rather go raise pigeons in New York? How do you convince 20-year-old Mike Tyson that he should go raise pigeons? There's no way. This is not going to happen. But then fast forward now, 15, 20 years from then, whatever it was, and what does he do? He raises pigeons. Why? Because he likes pigeons. He has the capacity to go out there and earn hundreds of millions of dollars, not quite the way he used to, but in different ways, maybe tens of millions of dollars, fine. But he has had both. He's had wealth and fame. He's also had obscurity and poverty. And he chooses something that's not quite obscurity and poverty. It certainly isn't fame and wealth, but it's something a little bit more. But it's certainly something that he just kind of happened across pigeons that made him happy. Who on earth would have discovered that? It's there are people who actually, if you can believe this, if those of you guys go to college, there are people who teach geology. They study rocks, dude. They look at a rock and they're like, fascinating. Have you seen this? It's a rock. And there are some things about rocks, I suppose, that are fascinating, but is it interesting that people can find passion in rocks? If you can find passion in rocks, I suppose you can find passion just about anywhere. And the things that excite you, of course, are going to be different from what excites somebody else. Yeah. You know what DMT is? Okay. Don't take drugs, right? We all agree on this. Okay. Hear me out. DMT is I think Joe Rogan talks about it a lot. Yeah, it's called are you on DMT, Louise? Oh, because if this is as good as it gets, it's a drug that you can take. But the interesting thing is that DMT is in all living things. So you have it in your body naturally. Plants have it. Everything that's organic has DMT in it. So anyway, I guess people claim that then when they take it, they always have religious experiences. So maybe there's something there that maybe what it reveals is more about what's inside of you more than what's inside the world. So maybe there's a desire on Tyson's part to feel like he's nothing, to kind of fade into obscurity. I don't know, that's kind of that is the Buddhist aim, to attain nirvana, not the band, but the state where you just kind of like your personality passes away and you just join with everything else. And so there are people then, maybe if you were to ask them, what is it that you're interested in life? Maybe that's what it is, community, belonging, not so much expressing individuality, but belonging to something larger. And the point is that we behave in these ways that are guaranteed to make us unhappy. We know what they are. I mean, Franco's talking about it in the article right now. Drug abuse, alcohol abuse, not just use, but abuse. But abuse because of an attempt to escape from something, to escape from our present lives. Like, why do people, again, because it takes us someplace else. Why do people abuse those things? Because they take us away from our life. But the problem about a vacation is that you always go back home. The thing about alcohol and drug abuse is that you always sober up, and you always sober up right back into the life that you escaped, except there's almost something worse, because now you've experienced what it would be like to not have those anxieties and stresses for a little while. Maybe that creates a deeper longing in us to be able to, or a desire in us anyway, to pursue a life that doesn't have those anxieties and stresses. But what would we do in life without anxieties and stresses? Because aren't those the things that kind of push us and motivate us? Yeah. It's a lot to think about, but you guys are big boys and girls, and you're headed off into the real world here in just a few months. And so these are the things that you are tasked with contemplating. You could not, but all you're doing is you're just postponing it. And the sooner you can figure those things out, the sooner you can start to sort your life out. Find out what's important to you. Find out what makes you happy. Discover it. Because we don't necessarily know, but man, you can find it. I have a friend who works in human resources. She really likes human resources. She likes filling out paperwork. Does that sound like anything fun to anybody? No. Couldn't possibly. There are people who actually study philosophy. Can you believe that? Those guys, they're just off the wall. But you can find, if someone can find joy in paperwork, if someone can find joy in rocks, if someone can find joy in pigeons, then that tells you that there is a lot of joy out there to be found. But going back to what some of you were saying so far, yeah, it probably has to be discovered, has to be found. Yeah. It is worth considering, because there's a lot that can go right if you move to Idaho. There's a lot that can go wrong if you move to Idaho. Is your life better or worse? Yeah. The answer is yes. Because then if you move to Idaho, of course, what are you thinking? Oh, if only I had stayed in Vegas. There's this old story. Do you want to add something to that? Or? Go ahead. As I was asking earlier, what is it that's going to make you happy? You can't know. You just can't know. And that's the frustrating thing about it. Because we like to think, if I just get this one thing, when we're saying if I just get this one thing, what we're really doing is we're expressing what we feel like we're lacking right now. If I just had more money, well, what's the problem with the amount of money that you have right now? It's not enough. Well, what would be enough? You can't really put a number on that. We can from studies, but ignore that point right now. But how much would you have to have? Because what is it that would actually have to be, what would you actually have to be able to compensate for? There's this philosopher, John Paul Sartre. There's this old story, but it's an interesting one. He was sitting around with his students one time, they were playing chess. And somebody posited the question, what would you do if you knew the world was going to end tomorrow? Asteroid headed for Earth, it's an Earth killer, you know we're all going to die tomorrow. What would you do? One guy kind of goes and says, well, geez, I'd probably go to the church and pray. Asked another student, what would you do? And he said, I would go home and tell my parents that I love them. I haven't talked to them in a couple of years. And they're going around and around and around. They're asking, what is it that you would do? And they finally get to Sartre. And Sartre is looking at the chessboard and he said, I'd finish this game. Why? Because the only thing that's real in your life is what it is that you're doing right now, which, for better or worse, means that whatever you're doing right now is the most important thing in your life. You're not doing it because it's the most important thing in your life. It's the most important thing in your life because you're doing it right now. So the question at any given moment is, what are you choosing to do right now? Are you choosing to put your head down and ignore what's going on around you? Are you choosing to engage what's going on, taking notes? Are you choosing to daydream? Whatever, or are you choosing to not just daydream, even though it looks like you are you choosing to actually plan your future, but people just can't see it because they assume the worst when they look at you? Whatever it is that you're doing at this moment is the most important thing. So maybe at the very least, maybe like make sure that whatever you're doing right now is worthy of you. Because this moment is the only thing that's real. Your past, it's in the past, it's not material. It's helped you get to where you are today, for better or worse. Your future, all the things that you hope are going to happen are just that, they're just hopes. Are they going to materialize? I mean, ask most people when they were young, did you achieve your dreams? Or not even your dreams, but are you where you ever expected yourself to be? Or are you just where life kind of put you? So the future is just a hope, the past is just a memory, so the only thing that's real is the moment right now. And so therefore, what is it that's going to make you happy? I guess the better question is, what is it right now that could be making you happy? Not like if I were someplace else, but where you're sitting right now, what you're doing right now, are you able to focus on this game and to finish this game? What can you make out of this moment right now that will somehow contribute not just to a happy life, because perhaps the purpose of life is not to be happy. Perhaps the purpose of life is to be good, to be virtuous, to do the right thing independent of your circumstances. And maybe by doing that, you can find happiness and joy in those moments. And what is life except what's life except for a collection of moments? And what's a happy life except for a collection of happy and joyous moments put together that at the end you can look back and say, yeah, it was happy. Because so many days you could say, at this moment I'm happy, because you find a way to find happiness in it. How do you do that? I don't know.
Struggle.
Maybe. It is different, isn't it? For Nietzsche, it's struggle. Find the stuff that pick up, just find the biggest, hardest damn thing that you can find in your life and carry it. Why? Because you overcome. And there's a sense of accomplishment when you overcome things. Frankl would say, so Nietzsche would say, go find struggle, therefore. And Nietzsche struggled, and he searched for struggle in his life. And you've got Frankl who says, avoid the struggle that you can't avoid. But when you can't avoid it, face it. Maybe. But that's exactly it, though. You have to find the thing that motivates you and makes it happy. It's different for you. It's different for me. It's different for all of us. But that's how you find it. Imagine if you were born into a life of absolute comfort. I'm saying imagine. I didn't say you are. So imagine if you were born into a life of absolute comfort. You might never know that struggle was something that would motivate you. Or maybe because of that, you just decide, I'm going to embrace my life exactly as it is. And that's the hard thing to do. To embrace your life exactly as it is. Not wishing for anything to be different. What would happen if you had more money? I don't know. Imagine if you were born into a very wealthy family and you got that car you always wanted and you drove it too fast and you crashed and you died at 16. You wouldn't be here right now. Was your life better because you were born into a wealthy family? You can't know. This is part of John Paul Sartre's point. You cannot know. There's an infinite set of possibilities of how your life could have turned out. You can never say it's better or worse. All that you can do is deal with the game that you're playing right now and make the most of it. Make the best of it. And not in the pessimistic sense, but in the optimistic sense. Maybe. Let's see. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques. Man, I did that 3 times today. I don't have one usable video. They're all trash. You guys had some good stuff, though.